Hey folks, this is Dr. Emily Scherning with American Resiliency. I'm here again with Elle. Before we get rolling, I want to introduce Elle because Elle is one of the most amazing folks that I've connected with here in the AR community. Elle is a public health professional focused on disaster resilience, and I want to show you this video that Elle made showing worksheets and resources developed based on the AR 333 method, fleshed out in an incredible way. We've had hundreds and hundreds of downloads from those worksheets, which you'd be able to see in the video description if you want to check out. And as you can see here, we've had even more hundreds of people watch the content. And if you're a person who is part of the ripple effect of Elle's work here, we want to hear your story. We want to hear from you. I was experiencing that effect just a few minutes before Elle and I started this follow-up interview, because my county librarian happened to watch this video and has ramped up our county's level of disaster resilience based on this inspiration. So, Elle, from the ground and online, I have a big personal thank you. Your work has been just incredible, and I want to talk with you as a disaster resilience professional in this follow-up interview. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to know, what do you see as trends in the professional disaster space? Because there's a lot of change in that landscape right now.
Yeah, so I will start this off with a caveat is that my experience is mostly in training and exercise, which are aspects of preparedness. So I don't so much have experience with like direct response and emergency management aspects. But I can tell you what I've observed just in going to conferences and hearing conversations, going to trainings, all of that stuff. So I think that we're seeing a lot more conversations and trainings available that include information about our changing climate. I also think that there's a lot more planning and conversations focused on adaptation and mitigation. And I also think that we're seeing much shorter kind of off seasons for
Mm.
disaster response. So, where there used to be a wildfire season or a drought season, those are getting longer and longer, and the professionals working in those spaces are having fewer breaks. Another thing is that right now we are seeing significant federal funding cuts or threats of cuts. And that's having a significant impact on emergency managers, on first responders, and on healthcare staff. So I think that as community members, we really need to shift into thinking about the role that policy plays in preparedness and how we can engage in that political process to not only improve our preparedness, but even just to maintain the systems that we have in place now.
This is not a time to be losing our systems. It is very interesting and important to me to hear it from you about this lengthening of the disaster seasons and about the fact that our response systems are already being stressed. I read in the news that Missouri, the state of Missouri, has 3 disaster calls out to FEMA and has not gotten any federal disaster response yet. So it's a serious time. And related to that, are there any particular recommendations that you would make to our AR community regarding preparations for this summer? Like, if you could tell someone, what should you do for the next 2 or 3 months? What would you recommend?
Yeah, so I guess the things that come to my mind, this is living in hot country, this is living in wildfire country, is if you're going to start anywhere with that personal preparedness process, I would say think about your water backup plans and your cooling backup plans first. We just had a workshop this past Sunday, and figuring out cooling was definitely something that was coming up a lot. So we were discussing, even for that 3 week period, it's not really possible for everybody to have a full 3 week no power type of backup plan. So what we discussed in that workshop was, making sure that you know where a cooling center would be and making sure that you are aware of the types of systems in your community that are set up to help you through that situation. So I would say that those two things. But then beyond that, I guess I have some other general preparedness advice that has really helped me that I would love to share if that's okay.
I would love it. And first, I want to pump up your point that you don't have to do it alone. For people who live in any kind of a population center, one step that you could take today would be to identify what is the community cooling center. And then what if the power's out and you can't look it up when you need to know it? But
Yeah, for
back
sure.
to Elle.
Yeah. Okay. So I have so much to say on this topic and I've jotted it down. So I'm sure that I'll get through all of it. So, first thing is kind of starts with an anecdote. So, somebody once asked me how to prepare for societal and political collapse. And my answer was engage in politics in such a way so that the government and our systems do not collapse. I think people need to be aware that even the most prepared communities cannot indefinitely substitute the expertise and the capacity of professional government emergency management systems. So, a reasonable goal for personal preparedness is making sure that you can stay safe and secure until that help arrives. But I think in our current political moment, that also means advocating against federal funding cuts that would damage our climate mitigation and emergency response capacities. Another thing that I think is really important is building community. It's something that we talk a lot about in our workshops. And sometimes people leave with really amazing goals that aren't directly related to emergency preparedness. I had somebody leave the workshop once whose goal was simply to talk to a neighbor once a day for 10 minutes. Love that goal. That's an amazing goal. I had another person come up with the idea of maybe she could teach Tai Chi to her neighbors. Amazing. These are all community building goals and they do contribute to your preparedness. And not only that, but they're transforming your life in a very positive way. Another thing I would say is trying to unplug. I honestly struggle with this one. I can barely talk, but it is something that I really try to do and try to be mindful of. And even though I'm not always great at it, I do know that when I spend more time away from my phone and offline, I do feel happier and I feel less overwhelmed. I also think something that I try to do is practicing gratitude and trying to find ways to appreciate our earth. So I like to go for gratitude walks in nature and just sort of notice the world around me. I think that our ecosystems here hold. I get like emotional when I think about it, and I get emotional on these walks, but I think that they are like resilient and fragile and just unfathomably diverse. And so I think seeing all of that beauty and also grieving it, like I'm getting a little bit misty eyed right now. I do think that helps keep me focused and keep me prepared for a changing future. I also think that avoiding doomer content, or at least an excess of doomer content, is really important. And I also encourage people to think very critically about the motivations behind doomer content. It really benefits fossil fuel companies for us to think that resistance is futile and that climate catastrophe is locked in. And the truth is that it is a complicated issue with no easy answers, but we're also in the remarkable situation of having all the solutions right at our fingertips, and all we have to do is use them. And in that sense, we're really very fortunate. You know, when I was first learning about climate change in middle school, high school, something that was always coming up was the cost. It's going to be so much more expensive to rely on renewables, and that's not true anymore. So I think being critical about that doomer content and really examining the roots of that and realizing that the main people that benefit financially from you believing that are the polluters who are benefiting, from us not transitioning. Um,
I also want to say
yeah,
that from an emotional stance, I think it is lame to give up before we call the fight. I feel like
yeah.
we should keep going while there's breath in us because biological systems are resilient. And next week, I just had a number of interviews with paleoclimatologists because I think that there's a lot of misinformation that we're not examining that is being repeated in the doomer space. And I just want to bring up some of those ideas and the evidence against them. Like maybe you've heard that large mammals won't be able to survive in a world as
Mm,
warm as the CO2 concentration we're heading to. And so I was
I've really
matching up
heard that.
CO2 concentrations and land mammal size, and they were like huge. There were those giant glyptodonts. They're like a 1,500-pound giant armadillo. They do not look svelte, but they're running around at those time periods. I think that it's very important to investigate information, see what is going on, what the profit motive is, I think it's very interesting related to that, that none of the things you're telling people to do for this summer are to buy anything. You're telling people to engage, to live a good life, to connect with each other, and to keep their brain turned on. And I love it.
Yeah. I also think this really reminds me of, so there's this thing that we talk about in public health, and it's called multi-level interventions. And what that means is that one program is going to address the root causes of a population health problem in two or more places. So we have the policy level, we have the community level, the interpersonal level, and the individual level. So, just as an example, a flu vaccination program with a multi level approach would do community education about vaccines. And then they would also have doctors doing like one on one consultations with patients to educate them. So, I think we need to understand our role in resilience and addressing climate change as a multi level intervention. We need to build our preparedness as individuals. We need to build it as households, so kind of that interpersonal level. We need to connect with our neighbors and the people who are around us to build that community resilience. But we also need to engage on that policy level and advocate for kind of Earth first policies so that all of those smaller systems can hold up. It's kind of an everything, everywhere, all at once approach.
A great movie. And I'm going to hit pause with you for just a
Yeah.
second because I am sure that there are people watching this out there who hearing about these many levels, it's intimidating. If you have
Mhm.
never had any experience building resilience before, this can feel overwhelming. It can make it hard for people to start. And so I want to ask you if you do you have a story? Do you have any story that you can share about how even a small amount of preparation has made a difference for a person? Because I want us to remember
Yeah.
that small is okay.
Small is okay. Small is great. I live by a golf course, and sometimes all the sprinklers go off, and we kind of we'll like lose it for a little bit. It's okay, and I'm never worried about it because I have gallons of water that I keep that I get to explain to guests in my house. Um, But yeah, so those are the types of things that can really give you peace of mind. I also tell people prep for Tuesday, not doomsday. So yeah, those are, I guess that's one anecdote that maybe
I
helps
think it's
people.
wonderful. And I think that this mindset, I love the phrase you had there, prep for Tuesday, not doomsday. I think that there's sometimes this energy around resilience and preparedness where the goal is that you're going to eat really manly jerky in your bunker, and that's the goal. But the
Yeah.
goal, as I see this sort of preparation and resilience, is maintaining quality of life through rough patches, is putting some give into the system. It's being able to endure change because there is give in the system. And
Yeah.
examples like, oh, the water's not working for a half hour. I am going to be able to make this pasta anyway. That's significant. That's a
Yeah.
significant change in your day going smooth and you feel good that you can take care of yourself, or you feel disempowered, I think is a very meaningful example. And I was so glad to be able to feature your work. It's such incredible work on the channel earlier. I'm really glad to have another chance to talk with you now. I've heard you've gotten some previous response, some positive response from what you did before. I want to know if you have any other workshops planned and what other ways you want to move forward with that work here, or if there's anything more we can do for you. And anyone with an organization that's hiring in this area, this gem of a human is looking for work. I'm just going to say. Then I'll turn it over to you, Al.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you very much for the plug. So yeah, I guess upcoming this summer, I'm really excited. I'm offering this workshop more in person. So I have a few local interested parties this summer that I'm really excited about. Because I think this workshop is at its strongest when you can give it to a local group. So this summer, I have a church group that's expressed interest, also a permaculture homesteading community, which I'm very excited about, especially because we're planning to have this workshop outside.
Those are
Um,
two of my favorite kinds of groups. And an outdoor
yeah,
workshop, how nice.
yeah, and then I also have a climbing gym that I climb at a climbing gym, and so we're planning to have that workshop coming up then. So the other thing that's
Oh my
been really
gosh.
cool, yeah.
I'm sorry, but that could be like an amazing disaster graphic novel. Is like this
You
core
know,
community of free climbers.
we've talked about it. Like, we've talked about me and the person that I am helping organize this with at the climbing gym. She took the workshop from me because we had kind of discussed together that we thought this might be a good fit for them. And she said that she was thinking about maybe the climbing gym being a central location that the people from the surrounding community could come to. And we were especially talking about, like, yeah, if there was ever a flood, like, that'd be a great place to go. It's because there's a whole like upstairs that's way higher than the highest floor of anybody's house. So, yeah, we were talking
They
about
stay
that and
cool
yeah,
a
and they
long
stay
time
cool.
too, because there's such a cavernous space. It's
Yeah,
smart.
so we had talked about that, and I think that's really cool. So I'm very excited about that. And I also have some people who have taken the workshop that have been from other states, and they've expressed interest in teaching it. So I think this summer I'm going to be trying to give this workshop more in person, but then also trying to facilitate that handoff to people who have taken the workshop and want to be facilitators, because I want to know what materials I could make to help those new facilitators acclimate quickly and be able to teach it successfully. The other really cool thing that I'm excited about for this summer is I've been creating some great accessibility materials for this
Oh,
workshop.
nice.
So, yeah, so I have In that folder that I gave you, there's now screen reader friendly versions of all of the workshop materials. There's also audio recordings for the student worksheets. And then I have large print and high contrast versions of the slides, the facilitator guide, and the student materials, and also screen reader accessible versions of those things as well. I'm really passionate about accessibility, so if anybody in the comments has other suggestions for ways to improve the accessibility of this workshop, feel free to leave them in the comments. I think some other things that are more ideas than actual plans right now is I would really love to have a recording of the webinar with a speaker doing ASL, American Sign Language, and then also maybe adding some content about how to ensure that disabled members of your community are included in preparedness planning. But that stuff, those two things are kind of a long way off. They're more ideas right now, but it is always something that I'm looking to build is the accessibility of all my training stuff.
You're so wonderful. These access issues are so important, and we are not a community if we look away from the needs of our disabled community members. Disability is an event that occurs in most people's lives at some point in their lives. And if we're truly doing community and resilience right, it's community for everyone. Al, we have documentation that your work has touched hundreds and hundreds of people's lives. And I believe that over the summer, as we continue to get people checking out your worksheets, checking out the workshop, it'll be thousands. Your ripple effect is going to be big, and it's already big. I hope that we're going to be able to interview together a third time, and I can read stories from people who have interacted with your workshops on the ground. I would love it if anyone who's watching this who wants to be a part of that could communicate with me so we can make Elle cry by reading these stories of change. That's my goal for the end of the summer. I think that would
Yeah,
be
and it's
fabulous.
so easy to get me to cry. So, but yeah, definitely bring it on. I'll ugly cry on American resiliency for all the viewers.
Well, honestly, what you have given this community is a treasure. And I'm so glad to talk with you again. I feel like the actionable advice that you gave us is so special because what you are saying that we should do to get ready for resilience needs in this summer is universally accessible stuff to do. It's these habits of mind, it's these habits of community. And I think that it's important that we have a professional saying this, that this is seriously what you do to get through a hard time. Al, thank you so much for joining us. This was a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Folks, thanks for watching, and thanks to everyone in the AR community who keeps this channel going. The donors, the volunteers, people spreading the word online, and especially everyone doing the work on the ground. Financially, AR is a donor supported organization. We don't take grant funding, and I want you to know your support really matters. If you'd like to donate, please check out the link on our website, www.americanresiliency.org, or on the About page of our YouTube channel. I'll look forward to talking with you again soon.